Hi, this is Michelle Martin, and I'm working with the ILRU on the New Century CIL's blog. Today we're bringing you what we hope is the first in a series of interviews with centers for independent living throughout the country, where we talk with some of the challenges and opportunities of managing CILs in the 21st century. One of the big issues that I think a lot of centers for independent living are facing is funding and limited funding, and what do we do to be able to pay for our missions and accomplishing our missions. And one of the strategies for doing that is becoming more entrepreneurial and using fee-for-service activities and other kinds of entrepreneurship to help bring in additional funding. Today I'm really happy to have with us Dennis Fitzgibbons, who is the Executive Director of Alpha One, a center for independent living. You guys cover, I guess, all of Maine and also have national projects as well, right, Dennis?
That's right, yes.
Okay. So, and I want to welcome you, Dennis, to our little interview. And I want to start by asking you what got Alpha One started on doing fee-for-service activities? How did you get involved in being entrepreneurial?
Well, that's a great place to begin, obviously, Michelle. Nice to be here with you this morning. The founder of Alpha One, Stephen Tremblay, actually, when he started the organization and they received their initial funding from the feds under RSA back in 1979, really began with an entrepreneurial approach to delivering independent living services here in the state. And it was actually in their first official year of business that they established the first fee-based program, which was a home-based care program that was consumer-directed. Started with a pilot model of 15 consumers. And I would say that that initial jump into that approach just kept going in that direction. You know, Steve always had the mind that you couldn't rely on any one particular source of revenue. It was too dangerous to do that as an organization, and if you wanted to have a future and you want to grow and to build and be able to serve more people, you really needed to spread out that base of funding and revenue.
So it really was baked into Alpha One from the very beginning that you would be more entrepreneurial and pursue multiple income streams.
Yeah, I think his view and my view in agreement with that is that, under Title VII, where we receive our Part C funding, it does say in the language that centers are supposed to develop other resources. So it's always been in our DNA, so to speak. It's what drives the engine. And we're always looking for the next opportunity around the corner to expand independent living opportunities for people with disabilities.
Yeah, and a lot of times I think that when organizations think about diversifying funding, they think about, well, we need to rely on different grant opportunities. We need to expand into finding different grants. But you guys obviously took a different tact in terms of being more entrepreneurial and looking for those fee-for-service kinds of activities. Can you give us some examples of some of the fee-for-service activities that you all use?
Yeah, I think the one that we're probably known most for is that we are the administrator of 3 consumer-directed personal assistance programs here in Maine, which are all fee-based under different types of contracts with the state of Maine. And that first one again began in 1979 with that 15-person pilot. Mm-hmm. At this point, we have hundreds of people in the state using these programs, and it's grown. Not significantly, but it has grown over the years, so that there's a large amount of revenue that comes through on that, a lot of pass-through revenue, and it brings a lot of expense in terms of running those programs, but it's also been the growth engine for everything we've done within Alpha One. And it just gave us the encouragement to look in other directions and to take chances and risks with where we should or should not put our resources to look for new opportunities. But there have been a lot of ups and downs and a lot of successes, and there have been some failures, but it really gives us a sense of, I don't know, it's just thinking about a benefit. It makes us think harder, I believe. There's always an opportunity, but if we only limit it to the core services or the traditional marketplace, so to speak, for disability services, then I think we limit the possibilities for our consumer base as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
early on, one of our first programs after home care was a driver evaluation program to help people with disabilities determine if they could or could not drive because they had a disability, and if they could, did they need adaptive equipment, and then to put them together with the resources that would help pay for those things. So, recognizing in the rural state that transportation was key to independence. So I don't know how many other centers have a similar program, but it's been one of our oldest programs, and although it's not what you would call a moneymaker, we don't lose money out of either, and people then who use it and are able to drive end up being more independent. It's a key factor in independence. So it's really very close to mission, I believe, even though it's somewhat unique to what people do offer in other centers.
Can you talk a little bit about how you sort of evaluate opportunities in terms of thinking about them as potential fee-for-service possibilities? Like, what do you look for?
Well, I think I wouldn't say we're terribly complicated at these things. A marketing firm might say go out and have focus groups and surveys and talk to people, and we do talk to consumers and listen to consumers, but in many cases consumers are not able to pay for some of the services that we've developed. So you really need to be looking at what will others pay for if it's not a consumer, or how can it be paid for. One of the great examples that we have here is what's called the Empower program. It was established as the Adaptive Equipment Loan Program back in the 80s, and that came out of a report that occurred in the mid to early 80s when a commission was established to look at independent living in Maine. Now, the commission was established because of our advocacy asking for such a commission, but the commission then came out with a report of recommendations of what would improve independent living for people with disabilities. And the top recommendation was the creation of a financial loan program where people could borrow money at better terms and rates than were available in other banking type institutions. And they could use that loan to buy assistive technology that was going to make them more independent. And it's very broad. It'll pay for instance, an adapted van, or it might pay for computer adaptations that enable to use it if they're not already built in. For instance, a screen reader for someone who's blind, or it might even pay for the entire computer if you can justify how it's going to make you more independent. So that the range of products that you could purchase using these monies are incredible. And the $1,000, it's not a small change either. Obviously, they've got to pay it back, but we actually were able to get the recommendations out there. We then had an active advocacy campaign to go out and find out, okay, how do we create such a program? And it ended up being a recommendation that we establish a bond referendum question in a statewide election to see if the people of Maine would support such a thing. So we floated out a fund that asked for a $5 million revolving loan fund, and then campaigned for a year trying to get it passed. And it did. Probably, I think to this day, it has the highest approval rating by voters of any bond that was ever done. It was also the first bond ever that looked at a concept versus bricks and mortar type thing. So we were taking that whole thing and just tweaking existing processes that exist, but trying to use it to, and the program is now in place. It's been since 1989, and it's very successful. It's used by consumers on a regular basis, and we're paid a fee here at Alpha One to administer the loan process with consumers to help them, the application, find the information they need, and then to represent them for the loan board that makes the decision whether or not to approve the loan. So it's been also very mission related in that people get the kind of equipment they need.
So it seems to me like in doing these kinds of projects, you would need staff who are able to see opportunities, think in a more entrepreneurial way. Is that something that you all look for when you're hiring people?
Um, it depends maybe on the position. I
Mhm.
think it's one of the things we encourage once someone is hired is that we actively encourage people to look at the world, and if they see opportunity or if they see need, to jump on it. You know, another example years ago was one of our employees who was very frustrated because he was dealing with consumers on a regular basis who were in some type of hospital setting, and they were at risk of not being able to go home because their home was no longer accessible to them.
Mhm.
And we'd get a call on Friday afternoon from the local rehab hospital saying, you know, Mary's going home tomorrow and needs a ramp. You know, can you put that in today? And of
Mhm.
course, you know, that's not how the world works. You don't have ramps hanging around to install. And then so too many Marys were ending up in a seconds and then, you know, not able to go home. And we did, that's the issue that really bothered him. So he came to me and said, well, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, you know, I don't know what the answer is, but everything's about building relationships. And I said, I knew one person he could go talk to. I said, go see him, tell him what you want to do, and, you know, for about, which he did. And then so he went and met with this person who loved the idea of building what we called movable ramps. They weren't necessarily easily movable, they were movable and they were built in components. And that's an idea he borrowed from a CIL in Soda. I
Mhm.
tweaked it a little bit. And so he went and they went, and then the gentleman I sent him to actually said, well, I know someone else we should talk to. They went and talked. The person happened to be the head of the Department of Economic and Community Development in Maine. And he loved the idea so much that he turned right around and said, I've got $7,500 to do a project on this. And he wanted 3 ramps for that $7,500 using volunteer labor, etc. And our individual who was doing this and leading this for us ended up building 6 ramps, somehow find another $7,500. And
Mhm.
they were just thrilled with the idea that a ramp could be built, uh, first of all, built modularly and quickly because we got it done within about a week's time.
Mhm.
And so within, you know, doing these 6 ramps, they came back in a very short time and said, we've got $50,000 more for you. And over the course of several years, that 50,000 became more like 300,000 statewide. And so a program was all created because one of our people who, you know, something was bugging them and wanted to do something about it, took that
Mhm.
entrepreneurial approach and did it. And, you know, and that's what we really encourage everybody to do. And some people are more comfortable with that than others, but that's really what makes us all think about how we can look differently at a problem.
Yeah, and that's a great example, I think, of entrepreneurship in action as well, as far as it's often very much about finding one single small problem that can have
Yeah.
huge impact, and what can you do to address that? You know, that was the thing that was bugging him.
Yeah.
And then, you know, having kind of that take charge, I'm going to find a solution to it.
Right.
Yeah,
Instead of laying it on my desk and saying, you need to do this because, you know,
right,
that's
right.
not how we operate. We're too small an organization for any one person to be responsible for things.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or forgetting about it and not doing anything about it. We
Right.
have
Yeah.
funding for something, so we can't do anything,
Right.
and which is another way that it could end up being handled.
Yeah.
Um,
And we didn't have the funding, but we had the time. So,
right,
yeah.
right, and so it's about saying we have a need. How can we address it, as opposed to we don't have the funding, so I guess that thing has to fall by the wayside.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, the relationship thing is key. You know, you've got to,
Mhm.
I think, to be successful, you need to always be meeting people, getting to know who the players are in various, you know, aspects of the world, whether it's in the nonprofit sector or the for-profit sector.
Mhm.
You know, we all have banks and we do banking. We need to use those relationships to our advantage. We have insurance companies because we have different types of insurance. Same thing there. It's and having them introduce you to other people. It takes a lot of time and energy to do that, but the more people you know and the more connected you are, the more opportunities that are going to come your way.
Absolutely. And then the more additional people you can get connected to when you need that.
Exactly.
You know, that expands your network.
Yeah, and being recognized as an organization that wants to solve problems makes a big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really great point. Sometimes we can be in a position where it seems that we're more like organizations where we have a handout all the time, you know, where it's like, what can you give us, as opposed to, look, we have things that we want and need to do. Let's talk about how we can solve problems together.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. So not all stills are going to have sort of that baked in entrepreneurial spirit where it was there from the very beginning. Can you say a little bit about what you think are some of the ways that CILs that maybe haven't been more entrepreneurial in the past could start to move themselves in that direction?
Yeah, and I think, it comes from leadership. I think an executive director, whoever it is in an organization, really needs to embrace the concept that this is a direction they should go. And then, of course, you need the buy-in of the board of directors. If the board's not going to support it, then it's never going to go anywhere. And I think that then we talk about, what kind of board needs to be developed. Who are the people who should be on your board? We try to find people with disabilities and a variety of disabilities who have, not only the experience of living with a disability, but also have either connections to people who can be helpful in the process, or they themselves work in different aspects of the world, whether it be for-profit or non-profit, and they have that expertise they can offer on those things. They know all the issues to be wary of before you jump into something, and they can advise on that, but they also can connect you to the kind of people that you want to have sitting around the table to discuss something that may need our input to help them do a better job. And I think that's resulted in some great opportunities for us.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel are, and this is I think our final question for today, what for you are the big lessons learned in this whole process?
Well, one of the lessons we learned early on was, if you're going to create something, you want to make sure you capitalize it effectively and you don't sell it short. We've made that mistake on a couple of occasions. Especially, we used to have a durable medical equipment business, and I still believe it was the right business to be in. We got into the business because the rest of the DME world was not serving people well, and we wanted to be the pace setter there to show those companies as well as consumers that you could sell DME products to people and give good service, 24/7 instead of just the Monday through Friday 9 to 5 type hours. And it was the right thing to do at the time, but when we started the business, it was never fully capitalized so that we could advertise and promote and really compete at an effective level. And therefore, we were always just not doing enough to really make it successful. And so it became more of a loss than it did a be it. Our goal was that as a for-profit, it would generate profits and help the non-profit, and too often it was the other way around. So it was something that we had to finally decide that we were no longer going to do, because it was not helping us achieve mission if we were losing money. So you have to be careful. It was a lesson we did learn about capitalizing the project. And one of the lesson that came from that is to try to start things that don't require a lot of capital, but do produce some income pretty immediately, and that's not really difficult to do if you have the right partners in place. And I think it takes it back to more recognizing your own strengths as an organization, and so always play to the strengths and play to your core and play to the mission, because if you get too far from mission, then it's not going to be that well operated anyway, because then there's too much struggle between should we or shouldn't we be doing this, and is that the right place to invest dollars? So.
And it sounds like another lesson learned was paying attention to when it's time to say, okay, this isn't working. Because
Yeah,
sometimes we can, keep
yeah,
things, try to keep things going and struggling because it seems like a good idea or whatever, but at some point you end up having to say, yeah, this isn't working.
yeah. And I will say, we often wait too long to make that decision.
Hmm.
We try to remember not to wait as long next time,
Hmm.
but we're always hopeful that you're going to be able to turn something around. And we've learned that at some point you're not going to. It's
Right,
time to let it go and move on.
right. And
And
trust
whenever
the
we do
best.
that, whenever we do, it's always better what we do.
Right, right. So well, that's great, Dennis. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today and sharing some of your experiences. This has been really helpful, I think.
Oh, been a pleasure for me too, Michelle. Thanks for asking the questions, and
Yeah.
I look forward to doing it again if we can.
All right, great. So thank you very much. This is Michelle Martin with the New Century Still blog, and we've been talking with Dennis Fitzgibbons from Alpha One about how they use fee for service and have built entrepreneurship into their organizational culture.